Italian Football Podcast.
Just expanding on what we said at the top here, I'm just tired and exhausted by all this. I hate that we're even having to discuss this, basically having to discuss before our very eyes and witness the self-destruction of Italian football again. I mean,
the way that this has been handled as well is something that I don't like at all, because I don't understand why they couldn't have just, if they're going to, because this doesn't, regardless how you feel about Calciopoli or doping or whatever, this doesn't go to the heart of what's happening on the pitch in that sense. Yes, there is a link, of course. If you cook the books, you can sign players and that impacts sporting, but that's an indirect. It's an indirect impact on what happens on the pitch. Meaning, they could have actually given Juventus to start next season with minus 15 points. There is no reason to go into the table this season, in the middle of the season, with this kind of nuclear option. There was no need for that. There was no need for that. That's where I'm most critical against them, because there was no need to do that. And also, again, I understand that it's for the previous seasons and the Prisma investigation and all that, but it's just it doesn't look serious. It looks like, again, it doesn't look transparent. It looks like a knee-jerk reaction. It looks like a reaction, like a populist reaction to just, we're angry at Juve for doing shady shit, and so we're just going to throw the book at them on a case which we're going to get to as well. Look, there is no doubt every single club in the Italian ecosystem does this. Juventus took the piss. They literally took the piss. They did it. They did it. If everyone stole a cookie, Juventus stole the bakery. Like that's the equivalent here. Okay, so there's no doubt about that.
I think that okay. Let me move around, because that was going to be my third point. Right? Okay. And I think this is what has angered and upset Juventus fans so much, is that is absolutely no one is denying that, and we'll get to whether it's actually even illegal what Juventus done. We'll come to that. Everybody inflates transfer fees, it's clear Juventus inflated transfer fees. You mean it's so obvious? I mean the Pjanic Arthur deal was just so obvious. I mean any idiot could see it was so blatant. A 30-year-old Milan Pjanic who'd been in decline for 2 years. You put it on the books for 60 million. You sign Arthur Melo for 72 million. I mean, it's so obvious. And there's so many of those deals. If you look through Juventus's transfers, youngsters, I mean, it was systemic. No one is doubting that. They did, like you said, they took the piss. But I think what has really angered and upset Juventus is, why are Juventus the only team that have been singled out? And yes, you said, like you said, there could be others that are brought into it, but we can only go by what we're seeing at the moment. And if I just to give other examples, I love Napoli. I want them to win the Scudetto. The last thing I want is for them to get points deducted. I'll be even more pissed off than I am now if Napoli were to get a load of points deducted and didn't win the Scudetto as a result of that. So the last thing I'm doing is calling for Napoli to get points deducted. But check out the Victor Osimhen deal transfer from Lille. I mean, that transfer is every bit as blatant as the worst transfers that Juventus did. They sold 3 absolutely dreadful youth players and Garganese to Lille for 20 million as part of the Osimhen deal. I mean, it's absolutely blatant.
Grassani, in an interview, he's a lawyer, and he says they asked him about this specific question. They said, why have the other teams? And he says the reason for that is because the Turin public prosecutor could not prove and did not have the evidence regarding the other clubs that the psychological element of the crime, meaning the mens rea, which I referred to earlier, the intent was not there. In the other clubs, whilst with Juventus, the evidence showed that it was.
Yeah,
well, do you see what I'm saying? Like that's what he's. I mean, depends. That's the legal aspect of it.
I know, and it depends. We don't know. We haven't seen the explanation, so we don't know. But I mean, I mean, it sounds like me. It's probably just I mean, it sounds like technicalities, but whatever.
It's not a technicality. It's just how the law works. In order for a crime to be proven, you have to have the act itself, but then you have to have the mental element as well. That's just how the law works.
Yeah,
and it works everywhere the same way. It's different ways of working. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, we'll get to that. I will come back to that. Yeah, I will come back to that in a bit. You made the legal point there, but I do have something to come back on that. So there's that. There's I mean, the Bastoni case from Inter is absolutely blatant as well. When Inter signed Bastoni and they included Agnelli. Has anybody listened to this heard of a player called Agnelli? I hadn't even heard of him. I was doing I can remember this from a few years ago, but I'd forgotten the specifics of it because I can remember there was some controversy at the time about this.
Yeah, I remember this.
I couldn't remember, but I had to do my research for this, so I had to check it out. Agnelli, who the hell is Agnelli? He's playing in Serie A now. He's 28 years old. He went for $6 million as part of the deal, and then the following summer, Bettella for $7 million, and
that was the following summer. Summer.
Yeah, but it was all part.
That was not part of that. There were a couple of players involved in the Bastoni deal, but Agnelli was one. I remember that vividly. But the following summer,
you might find it hard to prove. You might find it hard to prove they were part, but that does happen a lot in Italian football, where they say, okay, we'll do this now, but then next summer you take these. But anyway, you can't prove that. But anyway, just look at the figures of some of these deals. I mean, it says it all. So basically the point is, there's other examples as well. I mean, the Bonucci Caldara deal. I know Juventus are involved in that one as well. But even if you're able to prove that.
What's the name of that Napoli player who went for $7 million to Lille as part of the Osimhen? He plays in Serie D now. He's 22 years old. I think there's a Napoli player that was a youth player that went to Lille as part of the Osimhen deal, who at 7-8 million euros, and he plays in Serie D now. Barely.
Yeah, and he said that his career had been ruined by it. He came out and said, I can't remember the names. I did have it written down. Yeah, I mean, my notes here are so long.
Yeah, me too. I can't find my notes.
I was trying to condense what I had written down, or otherwise we'd be here all day.
And it's not for me. I've got, if you look at the most I've got written notes, I've got computer notes, and I've got my phone notes. So I'm really scrambling here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the anger with Juventus fans is, other teams, everybody does that. I mean, you've openly admitted that everyone does it. Yes, Juventus have taken the piss, and they've done it to on an industrial level, at levels that no one else has done it. But other teams have also done this a lot, and we've had some real serious examples, like the two I've said here, where they really did take the piss. Okay, maybe not in terms of numbers as much as Juventus, but everyone done it. So the point is, yes, okay, if you're going to penalise Juventus 15 points or 9 points or whatever, how can no one else be punished for this? How can it only be Juventus? I mean,
I'm saying watch this space when it comes to that, because and also and the second part to that is the mental element, which Grassani, as I've read, has said, and also Kine said himself, that they've looked at the totality of the evidence after the Prisma investigations, and they've come to the conclusion that there was definitely intent to deceive the system. And that's how sporting law works in Italy. Personally,
that sounds quite subjective to me. That sounds quite subjective, that they would decide that the totality of what Juventus have done in terms of the capital gains, justifies a 15 point.
It's not subjective. They only look at the evidence in front of them, and the evidence in front of them is what the Prisma investigation has handed them, or what the Prisma investigation uncovered.